Each Sunday night, I'd watch the practice with none of my friends. I'd turn the dial to ABC to see the creep of the week that Bobby Donald defends. But I'm out of practice.
With your host, Keith Varney.
Out of practice.
And Michael Joseph Intaglio.
Way back in high school, most every night, my mom watched QVC, so I missed the practice. There was no TiVo, what could I do? Wait 15 years, get fat, then stream it on Hulu. Out of practice.
Can you believe we've been renewed for season 6?
Out of practice.
New season, old, familiar depression.
Out of practice.
And welcome to the Out of Practice podcast, a weekly podcast in which we discuss David E. Kelley's award-winning series, The Practice. I can't believe it, but we are up to season 6. It is season 6, episode 1, the season premiere. Everything is different. If you're on YouTube, we've updated all of the graphics, but we promise to bring the mediocrity you know and respect all the way to the end of the series.
That's right. We as much as things have changed, they've stayed the same. If you've got 2+ hours to waste every week, we will be here in your ear slots to to do disturbing things to them. That is a promise and a guarantee from me to you.
Wow, that got uncomfortable really fast. I mean, we're 30 seconds into this.
Yeah, you know, Keith, I recognized that last season our overlay graphic for what we call the 2-shot here
Yes.
was basically my disembodied head onto a layer of Bobby's body.
Uh-huh.
And this season, it appears as though I'm going to be tempted to do this all season long.
Wow, bobbing for bobbies, apparently.
Yes, that's what's happening. Bobbing for it's very PC and G-rated. Bobbing for bobbies.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always like put something stupid over your graphic, but this one might be my favorite so far.
Listen, we can't waste any time. We're doing our first ever 2-parter, Keith.
Yeah, well, it's actually a 1-parter, but it's double length. So it is a series first for The Practice. It is a very it's a special event. Season 6, episode 1, The Candidate, is a 2-hour mini movie of The Practice. So
Wait, you said
wow.
an hour and a half.
Well, 2 hours including commercials.
Oh, okay. I don't have that kind of time.
Well, it's because 90 minutes of The Practice is like 2.5 hours of us. So, so what we're going to do this week is we are actually going to split this for your sanity into part 1 and part 2. So this YouTube actually won't premiere until part 2 is out because we don't want to give away the oopsies. So if you're listening to this and halfway through the episode, we just stop, well, that's why. We will pick up again next week with the second half with part 2 of The Candidate.
For those of you who can't wait and are listening to our nonsense in part 1, you're going to have to get all the cool visuals next week. It's going to be a little asynchronous, but there's no real way around that. So,
well, yeah. And let me tell you how important all of this is. The amount of text we sent back trying to figure out how to do this, and no one cares. It's utterly pointless.
Keith, were you able to watch the Oopsies last week? The Oopsies Spectacular. Were you able to catch it on the flip?
I saw some of it. Would I say that I watched the whole thing? Well, no, because
nobody
I was
watches
there.
the whole thing. Nobody watches the whole thing. You just saw Jen in the beginning.
Yeah, I saw Jen, and Jen was amazing.
Yeah, can I embarrass her for a second?
Please.
She's so mad. So
great. Let's do some damage to your marriage.
I wrote some copy for her.
Mm-hmm.
This is just indicative of who my wife is. So
yes.
I wrote some copy for her. And we decided this year we were going to do a spoof on getting renewed rather than last year we did the red carpets. Mostly because even that small bit of VFX last year was just too much time. So I was like, what can I do against a static green screen and just put her in an office building? So anyway, I wrote the copy. I then brought her in, and so that she didn't have to do any work, I said, here's a line reading. Now,
oh, great.
A line reading, as for those in the biz, is basically when a director, and nobody likes this, but it does save time on occasion. When a director,
director justifies his line reading by Mike Indeglio.
The director basically is like, look, rather than you come up with your take and then us meeting in the middle, I'm just going to tell you, do it. I'm going to just tell you exactly how it should sound, line for line, and just repeat that. So I did that for her. And then I started the camera and I said, okay, clap between takes and come get me when you're done. Keith, 30 minutes of takes.
No.
30 minutes of takes. She was trying different characters. She was trying to find who CEO Jen was going to be. And then I said, CEO Jen's already been on the show and she was just you, in the non-canon lost episode.
Right.
So then she did one extra take,
and
that's the one we used.
I would really love to meet all the other characters that CEO Jen could have been, though. Like, I want to see those.
Yeah. Well, what's best is that when I gave her the line reading, half an hour we had nothing. When I just told her what I wanted, one take.
Well, she's good at being Jen, and you're not.
Yeah, that's right. Turns out she's a pro. She's a pro Jen.
She is a pro. So I feel like we should commemorate. We are recording this on the 13th of March. That this is the 1-year anniversary of the shutdown, and I had a meeting with my producers yesterday, and was talking to them about it because today, the 13th, exactly 1 year ago today, was going to be this big reading I had set up of a new musical that I'm working on. And it was going to be like the biggest career moment of at least the last decade, possibly my life. And Broadway shut down the afternoon of the 12th. So less than 12 hours before my reading was going to happen, the Broadway shut down and I had to cancel the reading, which was devastating. And they were saying, well, we were going to go to your reading and then we were going to go straight from there to the invited dress of the Broadway play that they were going to start performances of the next day, Plaza Suite. So it is definitely a crazy it's a date that will live in infamy for a lot of the country, I think, the 12th and 13th. And of course, Jillian's show didn't shut down for another 3 days, which is why we all got COVID. So,
yeah, we had just flown on the 10th. We came back from Myrtle Beach to celebrating her big birthday. And it was scary because, we had gone down there thinking, who knows? And then on the flight back, everybody was like, panicking, and so we got home. I remember texting with you explicitly and you asking me what you thought was the best course of action, and us being who we are, we both quickly had the same thought, which was like, you just can't do it, dude. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Which was the right move. I still think was the right move. What would the difference have been, I guess?
No, it was, we absolutely couldn't. It would have been irresponsible to do the reading, and like I knew it already. I mean, I asked for a lot of advice, and it was a hard thing for me to do. But at the same time, I was like hoarding food above my fridge for like 2 weeks previous to that. I knew what was coming, and I was just hoping to get in under the wire. But that would have been a selfish move. So
yeah, I think well, I'll speak for the show real quick. It's crazy the year we've had, despite this sort of huge, just juggernaut of a issue that shared experience that we had globally.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That year, especially on the podcast, we both completely changed where we live.
Yeah.
We both entered our 40th year, which has had some at least definite physical and mostly psychosomatic effect upon us.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things have changed, and it'll be a year I never forget. I will say, we've been talking about mental health a lot lately. For me, what I'm finding really interesting that I'm dealing with is that, as people are getting vaccinated and the weather has been improving, and I'm finding a lot of triggers, and everybody's kind of commemorating this 1 year anniversary, and people in our profession are really getting itchy to be like, here's what's next, here's what's coming. We got to get back on the horse. And while I'm like, I think just really gun shy to put the cart before the horse and say, let's just let's do this thing, because we're so close to being at a good place. I feel like why rush it and ruin it right now? But I think what is a little bit lost in the shuffle is that, if you didn't write the next great American novel during this past year, or you didn't practice your monologues or get your career in order or update your LinkedIn, if you just bit your fingernails and watched everything on Netflix, I think that's okay. I think right now there's a lot of people projecting what they accomplished and how prepared they are, especially people in our business I'm speaking for. I'm seeing this on social media a lot, being like, here are my new headshots and I lost all this weight. And any person who lost weight and got in shape during this year,
I
don't trust it. I'm going to be skeptical of you. Right? I'm kind of
a sociopath, are you?
I'm going to look for the people who got a little bit chubbier, because they're the kind of people I'm going to connect with.
So here's my question. How do you feel about people who got a lot bit chubbier?
Well, I'm wearing my favorite red pants that I realized right now in this moment I have to throw away, because the hole in the crotch from just my expandingness is no longer acceptable. Before it was cool.
You're expanding this.
What I'm getting is that, personally speaking, this started yesterday for me. I've actually just taken all social media off my devices. I need to sort of just be away from other people talking about themselves for a little while. As I say on my podcast, that people, I understand.
We talk about ourselves for 3 hours.
Don't get me wrong. I get the hypocrisy. I'm just stating that I need to take a step back for a little bit.
I think that's perfectly valid. And I think your point about how much have you accomplished in this crazy year being not that important, I think is very true. Because I was actually having this discussion yesterday, because feeling that I feel like I didn't accomplish as much as I would have normally on paper. To have a year off and do basically nothing for a year, you'd think I have written a ton of stuff, and I haven't. I mean, I've written some things, but not nearly as much as I normally would, and I think that that's okay, because the psychological effects of what we went through are going to affect that, and some people write when they're miserable. I don't. I write when I'm hopeful.
Yeah,
and it's very hard to manufacture that when you're feeling so uncertain. So yeah, whatever you got. Congratulations.
If you
on getting
did nothing
through this
other
year.
than listen to 66 hours of Keith and I talk, you know what? That's cool.
66. We did a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Last week was really or 2 weeks ago. Anyway, Keith, shall we jump in? We've got a lot to talk about, and then we've got a hell of an episode to watch.
We sure do. All right. Well, let's start with.
Wait.
Filings and
I've already forgotten. We haven't even taken any time off, and I've already forgotten what does come next. But now I've recalled. So let's try that again.
Yes. Well, off our break of no time, we're a little rusty. Let's do.
Filings and subpoenas. Filings and subpoenas. Filings and subpoenas. Filings and subpoenas.
Well, we actually have 2 weeks of filings and subpoenas, so I'm going to go through this quickly. First off, our moderator, Phoenix Cage, weighs in with, "Are you serious? Mike and I have the same middle name? This is starting to get eerie." All right, so I have a new theory. I have a new
Conspiracy theory.
Okay, so here it is. Phoenix is not just Tom Brady and your mom and my brother. Phoenix is Mike Indaglio.
It's coming from within the pod.
Also, our good friend Jorge Navoa said they made, and this is talking about the season finale of season 5, they made 2 Boston Public references, and you didn't take that as a cue to play the You're Not Supposed to Notice reprise. I absolutely screwed that up. Jorge, I deeply apologize. So, yeah, no, that was absolutely an opportunity that we missed. Phoenix also says that was trippy. It went also about the crossover backwards, whatever the heck you would call that. That was trippy. It went from being a TV show to having characters dropped in the middle of a bunch of drama, then back to being a TV show. So was the crossover actually Eleanor's dream? Or did her subconscious write fan fiction after she fell asleep watching it? That, hold on, you deserve this too.
Conspiracy theory.
That's very interesting, Phoenix, because you could actually kind of use that for both crossovers, especially the Gideon's crossover, because it's essentially treated as non-canon. So perhaps it was Eleanor's fever dream while she was in pregnancy distress.
I kind of like it.
I kind of like it too. I think I might buy it. I think that might be the
It's more
canon.
plausible than...
It's way more plausible.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, all right. We're going to declare that out of practice canon, that the crossovers in season 5 were all hallucinated by a baby drunk Eleanor.
Is that inclusive of our podcast episode? Like she dreamed up some random podcast where we just enacted a lost episode?
Oh, that wasn't a dream. That was a nightmare.
That was definitely whatever they were shooting up that IV.
That was she did not get the good stuff. She got the generic. That's how you ended up with us. All right. Continuing forth, Phoenix, helpfully, wrote, start comment. This is for me. Keith, this is a reminder to click read more. Keith asserted that an EMT... No, I actually copied this and saw that he did that. I didn't actually read the comment, so here we go. Keith asserted that an EMT cannot call time of death. First, as a technicality, a call to a shooting would have been for paramedics, not EMTs. Fair enough. The distinction is similar to that of an RN to an LPN. Regardless, both can call time of death when it is obvious. In fact, when there is a DOA, a police may not call a paramedic at all, in which case it is they who declare the death and the coroner who estimates the time. Within the walls of a hospital, however, even an RN cannot declare time of death. Only a doctor can do that. I suspect it is because morbidity and mortality conferences investigate the latter, but not the former, as the former patient has not yet officially under the care of a physician. End comment. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if he just knew that or if he did some research or...
I don't know. I mean, if you did some research, good on you. If you just knew that off the top of your head, that's a little creepy.
Yeah, then I'm concerned, but...
No, actually, because it is something that comes up so often in movies and TV, and you hear all of the the news reports, they were transported to the hospital and then declared whatever. But I guess if it's super obvious, they can call the time of death if they're decapitated or something. So that's interesting. Continuing forth, on Instagram, LFB source, Lara Flynn Boyle source, said State of Mind deserved best episode just for the scene of Helen and Lindsay. And State of Mind was an episode in season 3. So the Lara Flynn Boyle fans starting to chime in. Look out, check out this year's season Oopsies.
Yeah. Wait till you get to the redemption of Helen, here's another thing we never surmised last week.
Helen Dredd.
Can we, Judge Helen Dredd, can the season arc still be titled The Redemption of Helen, even though the way it turns out? Can we still have that be the sort of overarching arc name?
Well, I suppose it could be the attempted redemption of Helen, because like the redemption of Helen doesn't necessarily mean that it was successful. It was attempted.
Helen's road to redemption. That means we don't even know if where on the road she got to. That's not as good, but
no. But it's the redemption of Helen's character as an interesting character on the show.
Well, that's just a terrible title.
No. Well, and but we should do the contact info. If you would like to email and complain about us talking about our behind the scenes mistakes, you can reach us at outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at outofpracticepodcast and on our blog, outofpracticepodcast.blogspot.com. Now, the next thing I always say here is do us a favor and join the jury and leave us a rating and review. And guess what?
No.
We totally have it.
Mr. Foreman, the jury has reached its verdict.
Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict?
Welcome to the jury.
What say you?
We have heard from KC3928, who wrote into Apple Podcasts to say, thoroughly enjoy this podcast. Mike and Keith have great chemistry, and they make me laugh every episode. They point out so many things that I've never noticed in my multiple watches of the episode. I also agree, if I ever murder someone, I want Eugene as my lawyer.
Oh, so they were like, I want to make sure these people know we actually listen. Or I'm gonna do a quote check.
No, absolutely. Well, Casey agreed, and thank you very much. And seriously, folks, join our new friend Casey, because it like actually literally makes a difference. You know,
Yeah, it does.
I see the numbers, and I see people trying out the podcast immediately after somebody leaves a
Those
rating and review.
recommendation algorithms, Keith. But the big question here is
Yes.
this podcast brought to you by A&W. A&W. Keith thinks it's good.
It's 0. We don't say diet anymore.
Oh.
I'm carrying enough shame. Now it's A&W 0 sugar.
Keith, what is the general rule? Because we didn't get to talk about it last week or off air. What is the general feeling of your mom? Because now your mom's a listener. What's her jury?
That's true. Yeah. Well, she actually really enjoys. She only listens. She just listens to the episode part. She just listens to the preamble part. And of course, I realized, like, I think last week I said if she called me fat, I'd push her in front of a car.
You'd push off a car or out of a train or something like that.
And then I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Obviously, I'm kidding. But yeah, well, actually, in all seriousness, like we just went through the death of my grandfather, and she texted me after the episode we did about your father, and said that she really connected with that, and that she felt a lot of the same things that you felt. So she actually reached out to me to say that. So thanks, Mom. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, to put a pin on that real quick, because, thanks for listening, and thanks for the new member of our jury. I happened to be at a Rite Aid for something this past week, and it dawned on me. I was like, I think I'm close to the cemetery. I'm not we've talked about this, a religious, I'm a religious person, and I also find it weird that people like go to a cemetery to what, right? But I'm not knocking it. I just don't. It doesn't hold a thing for me. But I was close to the cemetery my dad was at, and I haven't been in so long. So I went over, and two things I found really interesting was I couldn't remember where the heck the plot was, and so I called up, and I meandered about a little bit. I called up the place and I asked. They told me the numbers. I didn't know that plots all are numbered in a like a locker in a high school, which makes total sense. I just didn't.
Yeah, you gotta find them. Yeah.
And long story short, I get the thing, and I was 60 paces. I was 60 paces from the tombstone, and I was like really kind of proud that I'd made it that far. Good story. Yep. And Yeah, it was kind of sweet. I don't know. I felt good about it. It was just kind of it was a beautiful day. It was one of those first kind of springy days, and I was happy to have made the pilgrimage, was the feeling I had. That's about it. That's all I have to say about it. But
Yeah. No,
it's
but that's
interesting that it happened like the week that we ran that last episode. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, serendipity happens. And anyway, yeah, that was, I mean, I think that your story you told on that episode was really profound, and clearly it's connecting with folks. So thank you for sharing all of that.
thanks, man, and welcome to your mom. So glad to have you here, Mom.
Yes. Okay. Well, it is now time.
Speaking of great chemistry in that jury, I mean, she was talking about our podcast chemistry, right?
Yes. Our bedroom chemistry sucks.
I got a little hot and bothered. My wife was a little jealous when she watched last week.
Oh no. Anyway, can we please hop back into the time machine? It's now rescue us by hopping back into the time machine. This episode aired on September 23rd, 2001. So we're here. Let's talk about it in
This Day in the Basement.
So
Here we are. Yeah.
Here we are. So obviously, this was the first episode to air almost a couple of weeks after 9/11. And I was thinking, and if we're going to talk about what was going on in our lives when this show aired, we have to talk about our experiences there. But I was thinking about what to say, and realizing that there are now full-grown adults who were born after this happened, who have no memory of this. And that's just speaking of my mother. I remember her telling me her story of the Kennedy assassination, and sort of talking about what her experience of how she found out and all of that, and realizing that when she was telling me about it, it was probably 25 years after the Kennedy assassination, and we're already 20 years after 9/11. And so, it felt like ancient history that she was talking to me about. And now it's been 20 years. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I guess there's so much, we talk about the pandemic and how it's this kind of shared experience. And I think that for those of us, and, yes, there's a special kind of feeling for those of us who are or considered ourselves at any point New Yorkers. It was interesting timing for me because I had just gotten into school, and I was moving away from home, and I was moving to New York. This was where I was going to start my the major part of my life.
Yeah.
And this happened, and my dad, after my dad had died, and I remember not being afraid, though everyone I knew, friends, family, everybody was super concerned that you're about to move there. And Keith and I think we'll talk in a minute probably about what the general feeling was in New York City at that time, because I ended up getting there like 2 weeks later. But I'll give you my quick kind of long and short of it. I was still sort of semi-involved with my ex-girlfriend at the time, Carrie, and she was living in New York. She had gone back for her master's degree in education at NYU, and she was living on Water Street, like a hop, skip, and a jump from right where this was happening. And so I was actually going in to see her that day.
Oh,
And
geez.
I was on the Amtrak on the Northeast Corridor, going right up past your house, Keith. And the train stopped. And, it was not a cell phone kind of time. Otherwise I'd have pictures of it. But here we were stopped, and there is the New York City skyline, and you could see it. Just smoke. And no idea what was happening. Wasn't, once again, phones. It wasn't readily accessible, the information. Train stayed there for what felt like forever, but because we hadn't actually gotten to the city yet, all outbound trains were stopped for I think almost like 48 hours or whatnot. So if you were in the city, you couldn't get out.
Right.
Finally the train reversed back, and I remember getting in my car and just driving to Carrie's mom's house because I figured they were probably freaking out. And she was. Both her parents were. They couldn't get a hold of her. And so we just sat there and kind of held vigil all day. And then finally she got back, I think about 3 days later. And we talked about what she had gone through, and it was pretty kind of crazy because she was in the situation.
Yeah.
But I moved 2 weeks later, which is now basically.
Yeah.
And my very first few nights in New York are real scary.
Yeah.
Because this was just, everything was new, and this had just happened, and the smell.
Where
of the city
was your
pretty,
first place?
My first place was on 79th Street, so I was on the Upper West Side. But of course, one of the first things we did, some of my classmates, was go down to Ground Zero, and it was you couldn't get very close at that point.
Well, it's still on fire at that point.
Yeah, but south of maybe Union Square, you could already smell it. The city had a smell that wouldn't go away until, maybe 2015, 2010. You went down to a decade almost. There was just an acrid smell down there. And the only flip, and there have come to light many flips of this coin. So I'm just painting my memory. My memory of the city in those first few months after this is very much of people being very friendly and hospitable and supportive and for each other. Now, I recognize in hindsight has shown that wasn't the case for everybody.
No,
that was
not.
My privilege, of course, being me. There was a great, pretty overt prejudice against basically any brown folks. It wasn't, regardless of what your religion or your where you were from, it
didn't make any difference what you actually were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, my memory at least was of just a community, which New York, you really have to get in there and be part of it to ever feel that. The general perception of New York is not that from the outside.
Right.
But I'll say that to this very day, and I think this speaks to what your mom was saying about the Kennedy assassination. When the day comes, it's amazing to be 20 years old, not quite 21 years old, and I'm sure kids watching the Challenger blow up. It's the thing I relate to it. It's being unable to comprehend something emotionally, understanding it, and watching the news and all of that. And to this day, I still get up that morning, turn on NBC and MSNBC and watch it, the minute-to-minute news coverage. For some reason, that's the pilgrimage I make for this. And regardless of what I watch and what I read, and I've read it all, I'm fairly obsessed with this, and I've yet to be able to emotionally comprehend it. I'm still in that feeling with the pandemic. I mean, over 500,000 people are dead.
Yeah.
I can't even, let's not even talk about that. It's like trying to contemplate 2,000 people,
Well, and we've had days where we lost more than we lost on 9/11 every day of the week. And with COVID, yeah.
And for me, it boils down to two things. I'm sorry to be haunting, but it's the idea of a parent that there were preschools there, like that, of a parent bringing their kid to preschool. Yeah, really trips me up. And then the other is that image of, and I'll never forget, and you can see it on the camera footage. They're just zooming in on this guy, and you're like, oh, he's waving a T-shirt or something, and then he's just jumping out of the building.
Yeah.
And then you hear the stories of that wasn't one guy that
was
that
all over
to.
the place. Yeah.
Yeah. So go. I'll let you talk for a minute, and then I'll tell you what I actually did that night, which is a story that I think is, well, you know what? I'll tell it when we get there. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think what you said about it taking time to emotionally understand is really true. And, I'll tell my story, and I was not nearly as close to it as you were. But I have definitely experienced that every year that goes by, when I watch the documentary or whatever, I feel more, not less. And I think it's a couple of things. One, I think it's distance that comes from like just it was so overwhelming at the time. You shut down, you shut off, you're not feeling anything. It's going through a trauma. But also I think it's my connection to the city and the people of the city, and it somehow gets more real after 20 years in the city, because at that point I was still in Rochester, so we were I watched it on television. I happened to turn on the TV right after the first plane hit, and so I watched it all the way through the progression, the second plane, the Tower 1, Tower 2 falling. And that morning, I remember because I had a voice lesson scheduled for 10 a.m. And so I was, watching the television, and I emailed my voice teacher, and I'm like, what do we do? Should I come in? Should I not come in? And because I had an audition coming up, we did La Boheme, and so I was going in to audition, and I was working on Que Jolita, and my voice teacher had a daughter in the city, and he was scared for her, but he's like, come in, we'll do 10 minutes, we'll sing through the song once, and then we'll go back. And so I went in, right before 10 o'clock to go to the voice, and I went into the main hall at Eastman, and nobody had any idea anything was going on. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I make an announcement or something? I don't really know what to do. Anyway, so I went in, did the voice lesson and for 10 minutes, and then went back. And so my experience of the day was literally just sitting and watching in horror, flipping around the various channels. And my girlfriend is from Leonia, which is a town in New Jersey. Literally, you could throw a rock and hit Manhattan. And so for her, it was also much more real because it was her life. And I remember like the moment that she really broke down was seeing the skyline and seeing this missing piece of the skyline. And that was for her what made it real. And I mean, it's a, and again, you're 20 years old, you're watching it on television. I'd only been to New York a couple of times. And so I didn't have the connection with it that a lot of people did, which is why I think it became more real as the years went by. But I remember that what we did at the school was the Sunday after that Tuesday, we did entire school. We sang Mozart's Requiem with the full orchestra and the full chorus, and it was amazing. I mean, it was crazy, And the other thing I remember, I actually taped what I was watching off the air onto an old VHS tape, which I taped over the Giants game, which was played on Monday night, the night before. And it's funny because like if I go back and I watch that, it starts with like this incredible sense of normalcy. We're playing the Broncos, we're trying to do this, that, the other thing, and then just gets interrupted by this horror. And I moved to the city. My first day in New York was 9/11/2002. Oh,
so I started October 3rd was when I started school.
Yeah,
so I was there like a week before. So I moved to New York almost precisely when this episode airs. Well, I guess the next week. That night, I think I have a picture. In fact, so I was running a show. That closed. No, I guess September 23rd, Charlie Brown closed. So I was finishing up a run of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. And I have some pics I'll show you. It's so crazy to look back at photographs. I played Linus in this production. I would go on to do
cute.
the show one more time and play Charlie Brown, not for nothing. And this was a really crazy experience for me because I was moving out to New York and we were running the show. And this was the first time second time that when my dad had died during the run of the play I'd done previous to this. And I went on the night my dad died. I did the play. Oof. And that was my first experience with The Show Must Go On. And I didn't think it was going to ever get worse than that. And then this next time, it was 9/11. And there was I remember the conversation because we were, it was nice of them to bring us into the conversation. Should we cancel the show? It seems like such a trivial, trite thing, but you have to realize that these conversations are happening nationwide in all kinds of pockets, and there's so many considerations. In the theater, just like when the pandemic happened, the theater that's always the mentality is the show must go on, not because we're self-centered people, but because we are an outlet for people to escape when necessary. Right. And this felt like one of those moments. And so for better or for worse, and there's you could argue it both ways, we decided to go on. And the gentleman playing Charlie Brown, who was just such a wonderful soul. I've not kept in touch with him, but I was really just beginning not my career, but to be an actor, to learn the craft. Mm-hmm. And he was so kind to me and really was wonderful. And the director, whose name escapes me, unfortunately, gave him the ultimate look. We're going to do the show. It is up to you. He was the star of the show, and they said if you want to make a comment, because he took stage first and had a little opening monologue.
Yeah,
as Charlie Brown, you can make a comment. You can say nothing. It's up to you. And I think, had I been in his shoes, I would have done nothing. I would have just done the show. I would have went out and I would have started the monologue. And what he did, I've found that in telling this story, it seems very trite, Keith. But I have to tell you that the way he did it and the feeling, if you didn't live through it, it's hard to, you'll never be able to, just like the Kennedy assassination, those things, you're never going to be able to feel the feels. But when you were in that moment where we were all trying to, just like I said, emotionally comprehend, and there's this small feeling of nationalism, and it just felt like, I wish I could explain it, but here's what happened. And he came out to do his monologue, and he stood center stage, and the lights hit him, and the monologue starts. Some days I wake up early and watch the sunrise and think how beautiful it is. Mm. And so he delivered that line, and then he stopped. He paused before the next line, and then he took out a little American flag, one of those little American flags from his pocket, and he turned around and he walked over to Snoopy's doghouse, and he just taped it to the side. And then he came back, and the crowd, like the audience, went insane. There was crying, there was clapping, it was a thing. Yeah. It was an outlet. It was an emotional release to kind of acknowledge what was going on, acknowledge that we were all in the same place. And then he felt the crest of that, and then then we did the show. And I'll never forget it, because it was like one of those moments where the art form that you and I try to describe in so many ways and just can't very often.
Yeah.
And what we've missed so much this past year is that there's something about it all happening live that is different. There have been many workarounds and that we've done on Zoom and whatnot, but there's something different when we all gather together.
Yeah.
In the theater, and that was, I'll never forget that. That was Gene Bender is his name, if I didn't mention that. And that was a really an in the moment decision that really turned out to be beautiful.
Yeah. That still hits me today. I mean, it's. Oof.
Have you been to the museum?
I have not. No, I haven't been down for years and years, honestly.
I didn't think anything could top the reflection pools, but the museum is. I heard an NPR thing about it, and I was like, this would kill me. Like,
I get very emotional in museums.
Yeah. Oh,
I was at the Museum of Civil Rights in North Carolina, and like I walked into the first thing and just like started crying. It was like
I'm the same way. When Jen was doing Yidler downtown, I thought I'd wait for her. I saw the matinee and I was going to wait for her after the evening show. I was like, oh, I'll kill some time. I'll go through the Holocaust Museum. Holy Christ. You can't make that a whim decision like that. You have to be prepared.
No, it's not an Applebee's.
It ruined me. But I will say for our listeners and for you, Keith, I'll put a link in the show notes. Google has one of their, Google, if you don't know, the Google's Arts and Culture does some walking tours like Google Street View through some of the world's biggest museums.
Oh, interesting.
And in high, like 4K resolution where you can just like walk through the halls and see all the stuff. And they have that for the 9/11 Museum. And so it's maybe an easier emotional inlet rather than being there is something special, I gotta tell you.
Yeah. No, and I know that they have a special room for people who lost people to go to, and it's all right. Well, I'm going to stop crying on the air, and I'm going to finish the 9/11 segment with a one of my favorite 9/11 story, and it's tough to have a favorite one, but this one's my favorite, and I'm going to names will be changed to protect the guilty. So they're at the wedding of a mutual friend of ours. He had a friend who was also an actor who he wanted to speak at the not to speak, but during the ceremony, he happened to be there when the couple met the first time they were doing a show together, and this guy he's a bit of a Michael Scott, if you know what I mean. He does enjoy being the center of attention. He does enjoy the whatever. So I'm trying to do this carefully. So the speech he was supposed to give went like this. I know that this wedding and this moment is a very momentous occasion, and but no, that's what it was. Some of you here have known so and so for longer than I have. Others of you have known the other person for longer than I have, but none of you have known them for longer than me. Known them as a couple for longer than me because I was there when they met. And well, the speech went something like this.
Oh, shit.
So, on it's a few years back, and I should point out this wedding took place far away from New York City. So being from New York City was sort of exotic. It's like, so one day, this beautiful morning, I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike near New York City. And was just driving along, and I decided to stop and get some chocolate milk. I enjoy chocolate milk. So I stop in, and I get my chocolate milk, and then I go out in the rest area, and there, of course, is the skyline of New York City. And I'm like, oh, no, there's smoke coming up from the skyline. And it's so strange, how weird. And I went back in and I saw the news and I heard that this a plane had hit the World Trade Center, and then I found out later that another train had hit it. And of course, I was looking at it with my eyes because I was right there. I was there, and anyway, so I was there for another momentous occasion when so and so met so and so. And that's how we introduced them.
Oh, no. At the wedding.
At the ceremony.
Oh, that's like...
It was literally, that was what happened before. Do you have the ring?
There are two rules, from what I understand. You don't bring up the Titanic when you're singing on a cruise ship, and you don't bring up 9/11 when you're giving a speech at a wedding.
When you're in the ceremony. Literally before I do, he went on like a 5-minute riff bragging about having been there.
I think I've said this on the pod before, so I'll just do a quick recap, or maybe I've just told you. I've mentioned before I worked for the Musical Theater Alliance, and I was working on that festival. And there was one submission. I won't say who wrote it or the name of the title, but the plot synopsis, and so we got a plot, we got a script, and then a CD of like 6 songs. Right, that was the demo. It was about the breakup of 2 people. This guy, his girlfriend broke up with him, but he tells it through the lens of 9/11 and makes it a direct parallel. It is absolutely.
My breakup was 9/11.
Yes, it's like a simile. And
oh my God.
It is, Keith, the most self-indulgent piece of shit that has ever been turned in. I mean, he went for it. It is fully the songs. So in a Mike and Deglio first, we'll say, when I left that job, I decided, you know what? Because of course it was denied, this show.
Right, sure.
I'm sure it was never produced. I'm sure no one ever produced it, but I was like, you know what? I'm keeping the CD and the script because I need to remember. If I ever write something even remotely autobiographical, read this first to remember not how to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if you've ever adjudicated musicals, which because you did NAMT and I was a nymph judge for a long time, like you won't believe what comes across your desk.
Literally won't believe it. You're like, I can't believe
this is unbelievable. All right, we let us move forward and talk about.
It's time for the Out of Practice Podcast's This Day in the World. The greatest hits, the biggest movies, headlines from Vermont, essential sports updates, and for some inexplicable reason, the weather from 20 years ago.
What have I done?
Back to Keith and Mike.
What have I done?
It's gonna stay there. If you can't see it, no, leave it there. There's a big globe over Mike's face.
I couldn't have planned that any better. Okay.
Oh my God. All right. Well, folks, it was September 3rd, 2001, and our number 1 song was Fallen by Alicia Keys. The top movie was Hardball, which took $8 million in its second week. Starred Keanu Reeves and Diane Lane and John Hawkes. It was a baseball movie. Certainly a weird time to go to a movie. I know it, well, obviously it affected everything. The local paper of the Burlington Free Press, the headline was Veterans Wary of War Talk. And they should have been, because we're about to, make a mess of the world in response to 9/11.
Keith, do you know what other movie came out this summer that we missed because we were in this off season?
What's that?
I believe in June of 2001, if I'm not mistaken. One of my all-time favorites. Maybe you've never seen it. It's called Wet Hot American Summer.
Oh, yes, indeed. I know about it well. Jillian did a workshop of the musical version of that.
Oh my God, I'd love to see that.
Yeah,
Who did she play? What part did she play?
I think she did.
Jeanine Garofalo?
Jeanine Garofalo's, yeah.
Perfect.
So,
she's so perfect.
Yeah, and it was written by the original guys, so they were part of it. So yeah, so
she gets into the cool stuff. Your wife.
She does a lot of cool stuff, most of which she can't talk about, which is sad. Like the time that we saw Ernie Sabella was in her cast with a certain musical based on a movie starring a certain large star we can't talk about.
You know what the worst part of
word.
being so privileged to be in so many like first drafts of new things? 90% of new things don't go past the first draft.
That's absolutely right. And
it sucks.
I've written 90 first drafts that haven't gone anywhere. I'm hoping the 91st will actually go somewhere.
Hell yeah.
That'll be amazing. Yeah. All right, let us move forward with...
It's time for Sportsball.
In the first NFL games after week 2 of the season was postponed after 9/11, the Giants beat Kansas City Chiefs 13-3 in Kansas City. Ron Dane scored the only touchdown of the game in the second quarter. Kerry Collins outdueled Trent Green despite throwing 3 interceptions. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Eagles thrashed the Seattle Seahawks 27-3 in Seattle's temporary Husky Stadium. As they were building their new stadium. I wrote too much sports ball copy, like I'm prone to do. And now
it is time to...
I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. And I'm not going to take this anymore.
It's time to talk about the damn episode.
Okay, folks, we are here talking about Season 6, Episode 1, The Candidate, which is the first 2-hour episode of The Practice ever. And it was written by, of course, by David E. Kelley. He wasn't going to let anybody else write this first movie. And directed by veteran Jeannot Soir, who last directed Poor Richard's Almanac, which we lost our first major character. And that leaves us with only one thing to do, and that is...
What is that supposed to mean? What's your problem? Is this what happens to women when you insert your penis?
What? What does Mike think's gonna happen?
You know, what if he would have drank the curdled milk? Then what would have happened?
I have no idea. I literally have no idea.
I know. Well, so Season 6 is the season of what type of swings?
Well, going with my contemplative.
Of contemplative swings?
I want to really think about it, be measured. Nothing more exciting.
Sounds interesting.
Very exciting. Measured, not hot takes, more lukewarm.
That's what everybody comes here with the stakes so low. The lowest stakes of all time. You're going to go with the lukewarm.
I see a stapler down there, and I see the title here, The Candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Keith, give me a little education.
Okay.
Does every district attorney have to run for office, each and every one of them, or just the head one in the office? Because they're all assistant district attorneys, right?
That is a very good question. I don't think that any of our characters are political office holders. I think that the district attorney and judges, I imagine it goes district by district how they do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Helen we've never heard reference of Helen having run for her position, or Richard.
Okay. So I'm going to measure a guess.
A lukewarm, medium measure.
Oh, you know it. And that guess is going to be that there is a new district attorney running for office.
Okay.
Okay. And so the fates of of Helen, who is a huge part of our last season, is involved. All right. And this candidate is now accused of having raped someone. So Helen is going to have to prosecute the man running for her to be her boss, who is defended by none other than Eleanor, because we don't yet know how Bobby wants to proceed now.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what it is? It is not the season of lukewarm guesses.
Okay.
What you just did there was pitch an episode. So it is the season of hot pitches.
Really be careful with that plosive, however. We do not want to get canceled, all right?
Hot pitches.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, if you want to hear us pitch some hot on microphone, you can do that by heading over. Keep that graphic.
I don't even know what you're laughing at now.
The two of us on the bottom left.
That's on our logo now.
Well, how did you get us making the same stupid doofus expression?
It's not hard. Look, the YouTube algorithms want to see our faces. That's how they recommend the videos. They won't recommend it if you don't see your
faces. Let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
I know now the episode needs a 3-parter.
Oh, Jesus.
Nope, that's not it. That's not it. How do you think we have enough for a full audio compilation of me doing old man laugh?
Of you like
when I start to cackle and just like make
cigar
old
cackle?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, the wheeze laugh. Oh, we definitely, between the two of us.
Oh, God.
They'd probably take us right to the hospital. Like, they could probably diagnose some sort of disorder with that.
Oh, crap. Well, Jorge, now you know what the next 15 hours of your life has to be.
Oh, no.
All right. So
Don't
go head over to the YouTubes. Just kidding.
To your podcasting service of choice to listen to us listen to Season 6, Episode 1 of The Practice. Yeah, I just bailed you out.